Hiya, it's Easter Saturday, except that's not really a thing. It's the Saturday between Good Friday and Easter Sunday, and it sometimes gets missed. Actually, the Gospels tell us a little story about what happened that day, and it's in Matthew 27, right at the end. And it says this from verse 62: The next day, the one after Preparation Day, the chief priests and the Pharisees went to Pilate. So this is the day after Jesus died. It's the Jewish Sabbath. And it's quite funny, really. The religious leaders were outraged at Jesus for working on the Sabbath a number of times. And guess what they're doing now? They're working on the Sabbath, at least how they understand it. And so they're speaking to Pilate, who is the Roman leader with jurisdiction. Sir, they said, we remember that while he was still alive, that deceiver said, after 3 days, I'll rise again. That's quite interesting. They actually remember that Jesus had said he would be dead 3 days and then rise, better than his disciples remember him saying it. This also tells us Jesus must have definitely been dead. And sometimes this is controversial. Some people try to say, well, Jesus didn't really die on the cross. There was once a newspaper correspondence that pointed out how silly this was. One person wrote in, well, you know, our preacher said on Easter that Jesus just swooned on the cross and the disciples nursed him back to health. What do you think? And someone wrote in reply, well, why don't you beat your preacher with a whip, nail him to a cross, hang him in the sun for 6 hours, and then run a spear through his heart before putting him in an airless tomb for a day and a half, and see what happens. Anyway, these were Jesus' enemies. They were sure he was dead. And then it continues. So give the order for the tomb to be made secure until the third day. Otherwise, his disciples may come and steal the body and tell the people that he's been raised from the dead. This last deception will be worse than the first. So these religious leaders are very concerned about what will happen next, but it doesn't make a lot of sense. Even if the disciples had got hold of the body, if they went round proclaiming a resurrection with no visible evidence, people would quickly write them off as lunatics anyway, surely. This is a response based on fear, a fear based, I think, on the suspicion that Jesus may just be able to do what he said, and they're a bit concerned about it. Here's what happened at the end. Take a guard, Pilate said. Go make the tomb as secure as you know how. So they went and made the tomb secure by putting a seal on the stone and posting the guard. So Pilate sent a Roman guard, which probably means at least 4 men, all armed, with clear instructions. And we know if they'd failed in their assignment, it's quite possible that they would have faced execution themselves. That's how brutal the Romans were. So they weren't messing around, these guys. They could not be bought off. And the great irony is that on Easter Saturday, the enemies of Jesus make the case for the resurrection stronger by making it clearly impossible for anybody to have pulled a fast one. There's no way, humanly speaking, the tomb could have been empty on Sunday morning. Jesus was definitely dead. Nobody could access the body even if they wanted to, not that they even had a good reason to try to, and the scene is set for Easter Sunday. Nobody knew what was coming, maybe apart from the very people who wanted it not to happen more than anything. So there's a thing to chew on today as we approach the day of the resurrection. There was nothing anybody could do to stop it happening. God's purpose in rescuing us and beating death could not be overturned. It could not be denied.